I'm 34F always, doing due diligence to either save us money or try to use our money to make money. My fiancé 33F is the complete my opposite. Even Googling something seems like way too much work for him. He always has to be searching for that next expensive hobby that he's going to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on equipment for, then get bored of it a few months later, sell all the stuff at a huge loss, and use that money to pay for whatever new hobby he wants. Last year, my brother-in-law decided to go for his motorcycle license. My fiancé never mentioned anything about wanting to ride motorcycles until he heard my brother-in-law was going, and then he came home one day spazzing trying to beg me to secure a spot in my brother-in-law's class because he wanted to take his motorcycle license too. Again, way too much work for him to try to figure out that himself. He ended up buying a motorcycle off of Facebook Marketplace along with thousands of dollars of motorcycle gear, tune-up things for the bike, $2,000 yearly insurance because he has a new rider. We are not rich. I should clarify he doesn't ask me for money for this, but he makes a lot more than I do, so any money he spends on his stuff, I have to make up our monthly bills for in some way, shape, or form. 3 months after buying that motorcycle, he came home with another new motorcycle right before Christmas. Of course, he couldn't turn it down because it was a super fast sports bike and of course, such a great deal. I thought, well, at least we'll have a bit of money from him selling the old motorcycle. Nope. Since the new bike is a sports bike, the yearly insurance was quoted around $4,000 for the year, and of course all the stuff he bought for the old bike is now useless as he will sell it for a loss, because a lot of it was cosmetic and now he wants to buy a bunch of brand new stuff this spring for the new bike. On top of this, his monthly expenses are crazy. He pays $650 a month for a truck that's a piece of shit. He owes CRA $600 per month because he opened a corporation 3 years ago and never bothered to file his taxes the previous year. That same year he sold his ATV, and I kept telling him to use the money to file his taxes as he barely works that year, so his taxes would not be very much. Of course he didn't listen. SRA kept sending notices and essentially reassessed him at his previous year, and now he owes them almost $5,500 in taxes. The thing is, he literally barely operated that year, and there is no way he actually owes that much. He is quite literally that lazy to overpay, and now he is owing them back a bunch of money he doesn't owe just because he didn't want to deal with the stress and money last year at the time to file his taxes properly. He makes decent money, but every month we are always behind, and using credit card to catch up just for groceries. Our 2 elderly pets who take prescription food. We have a big family, so there's at least 1 birthday party per month, etc. I have hardly any monthly expenses besides my $180 car insurance. My car is paid off. I value savings and future trips over buying new clothes or tech. Mind you, I don't make much money, but I could be putting a lot more away if all his money wasn't being drained by his monthly expenses. His friend recently told him to get into crypto before Donald Trump was elected, saying that the US market will boom. I'm in Canada. He put $2,000 into some random coin that money doubled the next morning. Since then, he's literally obsessed and sits at home all day watching it, and has since put another $100 onto the coin, which has now dropped to about 5% of the value. It was when he first bought it. I asked him about the coin, like what does the coin mean, what is the company, etc., and he couldn't tell me. Last night he told me he's putting another $5,000 into the coin and going all in. I asked if he did any research whatsoever and he said nope. I'm honestly at my wit's end. I simply cannot fathom someone investing money into something that they don't even know what it is. We are complete opposites, and he does things for the thrill and is always wanting short-term gain, whereas I am more of a long-term planner. I know damn well that coin is going to flop and there goes $250 down the drain, when that could have paid for our groceries for a week. I have huge resentment because a huge chunk of our money, every month, goes to CRA1. Again, he never even worked that much, or should be paying that. He is just so lazy with responsibilities, and responsibilities are at the end of his line of importance. I've been with him so long and I am a realist. This is just how he is. It's embedded in him and he will never change most likely. I've asked him many times. I have tried to set up savings accounts for him, thinking maybe if he saw money grow he would get inspired, but he always ends up withdrawing it at one point or another, either for a want or to cover expense bills because he bought a want and now we are short. I can't help but find myself daydreaming of moving back in with my mother, saving my money, having a way less expensive grocery bill because I don't eat as much as he does, and just having a stress-free life. My mother has no room for that, and of course it's not that easy, but I can't fake not feeling like he's such a moron. I'm in a high cost of living area and I cannot afford to move out on my own at all. Besides his stupid financial choices, he is affectionate, helps out around the house and all that stuff, but as time goes on, I find him more and more like an ADHD toddler that just wants toys and doesn't care about the money or responsibilities, and it's really giving me the ick. I guess it would just be nice to hear if anyone has been in a relatable situation. What do you think about? Here are some popular comments.
I divorced a man for less egregious financial behavior than this. And later in life, too. And you know where I am now? 55 with a very nice retirement portfolio, cruising along in easy part-time work because I no longer need to pull in big money, no debt, fully paid off house, holidays done exactly as I want. It is such a nice place to be, well-planned, well-ordered, zero financial stress, entirely under my control. You could get there too, but you'll need to let this man go.
Girl, you are incompatible. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but he's not even trying to change the situation for the better. When I was dating my now husband, the next step was for us to move in together. Like you, I'm very money conscious, so the time came to have that talk, finances. I discovered that while he had a great job, career that was steady and stable, he wasn't good with money. Debt, very little savings, and at times living paycheck to paycheck, stupid debt that he just carried. That was a big no for me, so I said that we would just continue with our current living arrangement and still date. Topic closed. A few months later, he wanted to talk about that again, but this time he came with a different story. Cleared his debt, stopped doing stupid stuff with his money, started saving. This showed me that he was serious about a life with me, and he knew that part needed to change in order to be compatible with our future goals. My point, people will change when they want to change for the better. It doesn't seem like your partner does. Trust your gut on this one. You wrote this for a reason because your gut is telling you that you are not meant to build a life with this person. Do not legally tie yourself to someone who will drag you down.
You seem like a smart person, so aside from the sunk cost fallacy, what's keeping you with him? You know what you need to do, so next time he spends all his money, put your foot down and say, "Too bad, you still owe this much on our necessities." Be sure to give him a heads up when you see him spending, I'm not going to cover expenses for you anymore, so be sure you have enough left to pay for your part. Maybe if he knew you won't rescue him from everything, he'd stop being so irresponsible. I have a hard time believing you'd have gotten so involved with him if you'd known from the start what he was like, which means he probably used to manage this better. That said, I'm really impressed with how capable and knowledgeable you are. I'm sorry you're going through this, and I believe in your ability to find the right solution for you.
He sounds like a child, and an exhausting one at that. I don't understand why you're still with him. He's holding you down. That man will slowly ruin your life the longer you stay with him until you are a shell of a person.
He needs to pay his half of the bills, calculate what your half is, put your extra money into savings, maybe savings where it can't come out immediately. I don't know what else to say because I wouldn't have put up with this very long. Me fully supporting some jerk who makes more money than I do? Nope.
He sounds a lot like my ex-husband, and the things you mentioned are a big part of the reason why he's my ex-husband. He was putting us into debt that we eventually wouldn't have been able to get out of. It won't get any better. If you really love this guy and want to stay with him, the only way to save yourself from his irresponsibility is to have separate homes. Otherwise, he will drag you down with him and ruin your finances. And absolutely don't have kids with him.
Honey, his spending habits aren't going to magically go away when you actually get married to him. He does this because he has you as his financial safety. Please don't get legally tied to him. His inability to make smart money decisions is going to drag you down with him. His ignorance in how the world works, his reckless spending with his high income, he sounds like Alberta, man, no offense.
Yeah, I spent my entire 20s married to this exact same type of bullshit, right down to buying a random motorcycle without consulting me. The very best thing I ever did for myself and my kids was to divorce that and go live a life where my money wasn't being thrown down the rat hole of a grown adult's flagrant irresponsibility. Whatever you do, don't marry this person. When you do finally leave, you'll be shocked how much money you have.
I'm sorry you're going through this. I don't know how debt works in Canada, but when I divorced my husband of 15 years, I ended up having to take his $65 K in credit card debt. That's because over the course of our marriage, I ended up buying, with my own money, 3 rental properties and had a healthy retirement plan. All debts and assets belong to the marriage, so remember you are responsible for his debt. I couldn't change his behavior, couldn't get him to get a job. I was covering our expenses for a long time while he's stalling selling his second car because that was a blow to his ego. If he can't or is unwilling to control his spending, you really need to consider what to do. I would start by saying you're no longer going to cover his end of the expenses. And then you need to decide what action you will take when he doesn't come up with the money. And you need to stick by it. Are you going to move out or let your mortgage go unpaid for a month? You are enabling him right now. And I empathize because I have been there. And getting out was very painful, but ultimately the right thing for me.
I was with a person who was bad with money and who had a taste for expensive things. I was 34, had my own home, and $150K in retirement. Now I'm 43, divorced from that person, a ton of debt, and am renting after I sold my house many years ago as they didn't want to live in the quiet part of the city I lived in. I made so many bad financial choices for love. Don't be like me. Get out of this now. I'll still be able to recover since I have a good job, but it will be when I'm 70, not 60. My biggest regret in life is not saying no to this person and prioritizing what I wanted. I hate even typing this out as it's caused me such misery. Just trying to focus on my good job and what I can still accomplish. I know many people are in far worse situations with far less hope.
You can't marry this person before this is resolved. Let that be very clear. There are 2 ways to organize your shared finances. Either combine income and set your goals together. This can include both getting a monthly amount of spending money with no questions asked. This requires budgeting together and being on the same page. The other option is to keep everything split. You pay for yours and make decisions with your money, and your partner does the same. You each pay part of the bills, divided in a fair way. For example, the ratio of your income via their income. In this case, you are responsible for your money and don't have any further say over your partner's income, besides that they should provide their share of the bills. And if you go this route, you need a rock-solid prenup that makes it clear which assets are yours and theirs. Fix this first.
I'm sorry, but I would never tie myself legally to someone who is this financially irresponsible. Everything you wrote above screams red flag. You described him as an ADHD toddler. My husband being another child I have to control and take care of is my worst nightmare. Your fiancé is not reliable, and once you're married, you can't control him, blowing your savings on the next expensive hobby that attracts his attention. I'd give this relationship some thought.
My ex was like this too, not married, thank goodness, but living together, money was always tight, and I felt like I was the no-fun police while he spent just like yours. I thought I would struggle financially after he left, but actually I ended up in a much better financial situation, also living in Hick Hole, and I barely have to think about money because everything runs like clockwork. It's more valuable to be financially smart than to make a high income. At a certain point, I also dated a different guy who made $200K, but never had any money. So I don't know what's going on with these guys.
He sounds a lot like my ex-husband. And the things you mentioned are a big part of the reason why he's my ex-husband. He was putting us into debt that we eventually wouldn't have been able to get out of. It won't get any better. If you really love this guy and want to stay with him, the only way to save yourself from his irresponsibility is to have separate homes. Otherwise, he will drag you down with him and ruin your finances. And absolutely don't have kids with him.
Financial incompatibility is one of the leading causes of divorce, and your relationship demonstrates why. Finances aren't a silo in anyone's relationship. Finances impact our access to basic needs, our ability to plan or not for our future, and touch on value systems around free time, vacation, etc. I'm not saying don't marry him. That's your call. But if you do marry him, what will that look like? On top of the fact that you aren't financially compatible, he's also routinely putting his desires ahead of yours and behaving like you're the one who's out of line to expect respectful communication around major purchases. Beyond financial incompatibility, there's also a lack of mutual respect. What does that look like if you become legal, lifelong partners?
I didn't get to the end, but this is not husband material. He should live the bachelor life free of partner responsibilities. It's tough because you probably love him, but you two are not compatible. Different financial goals are valid reasons to break up. It's not about money, it's feeling spread too thin to make ends meet while your partner gets to live it big. It's unsustainable. Edit, maybe you can find someone who needs a roommate to split rent.
He's very childish, and because you are there to carry him, he doesn't take accountability or learn. It's sad because the only way he will learn is when you leave him and he gets to deal with his stuff. Did he leave his parents to go living with you straight away? Honestly, it would be best if you leave him. But if you want to continue the relationship, you should stop living together for 2 years. It's the only way for him to become an adult. If you ever meet an adult man and have a relationship with him, you will see the difference and you will never want to go back with your man-child again. You cannot even have a child with someone like him because he will ruin the life of the child of yours and his own. Why don't you go on Ask Man and see what man have to say about this? I bet you quite the same.
It sounds like he has untreated ADHD or some chemical imbalance. The impulsively, the switching from one new hobby to the next, the poor money management, the thrill of the big thing, the willingness to lose money, pay more to avoid figuring out the actual tax fee. This is 100% just him. But maybe a DR visit and therapy could help? Decide what's most important for you. Do you want to be in this situation in 10 years? 30?
Girl, get out of there before you're legally tied to this man. Your finances will be absolutely fucked if you marry him. I once heard a divorce lawyer say marriage is one of the biggest legal and financial decisions you can make. He lets himself be irresponsible because he's pushed the responsibilities of adulthood onto you. You're his mom now. If you leave, he's either going to sink or swim. But if you stay, he will never learn and you'll be the one paying the price, literally.
As one girl who is smart with finances to another, how much money your spouse brings in is far less important than how your spouse spends money. Someone with a lower income can increase income, or you can increase income, but someone with bad financial habits will likely never change, and it means no matter what you do, he will ruin your financial position. I'd way rather date a man who makes $30 K year with no debt and no savings than a man who makes $300 K year with no debt and no savings. The latter one is showing me he will blow every dollar earned, including every dollar I earn.
What you have is called a breadloser. Even Googling something seems like too much for him. Do you want stupid children?
You referred to him as your fiancé. Please do not marry this man. His bad financial habits will have a negative impact on your finances and eventually your credit. I second the suggestion above of making him pay for his half of bills, expenses, no matter what crap he gets into. If he has to charge up his credit cards, let him. But stop covering his shortfalls. And do not marry him until he stops being so financially reckless, which you yourself acknowledge is unlikely to ever change.
One of the top reasons couples split is over finances. Do you really want to spend your life worrying constantly about his spending and trying to get him to change? It sounds exhausting.
You said it yourself, you cannot change him. Now you can figure out if this is a deal breaker or not. And it most likely is a deal breaker. My therapist has told me number one reason for divorce is over finances. Frankly, financial security matters a lot to me, and I find excessive frivolous spending not just reckless, but an aspect of consumerism that doesn't align with my life or values. I would not willingly marry a man like that. Remember, marriage is a business contract. Your finances may be kept separate to an extent, as you should, but any debt he accumulates may be equally your liability. Any money that goes towards a shiny new tech or temporary hobby is money you two do not get to put in an emergency fund or a shared savings account for a goal, vacation, retirement, big purchase. Now, it's more than fair for him to have his own fun spending money, but I get the feeling this is beyond that. When crisis hits and you have to bail him out time and time again, he'll drain your savings and resentment that's already there will build. Is that a fair setup for a marriage to either of you?
I don't understand how the relationship progressed once his financial irresponsibility and overall immaturity came to light. Why would you agree to marry him and sink your own financial future?
I am someone who spends kind of frivolously for the dopamine hit, but this issue doesn't sound like it's going to go away, and I think you'll regret marrying someone, thus combining expenses and financial responsibility, who spends so differently than you and doesn't seem to want to do any better about it. Imagine buying a house with him or having a kid with him. You'll be the person responsible for making sure you all can afford everything, for saving, and it will cause fights. You'll have to parent him.
Financial incompatibility is one of the major reasons for divorce. Don't get married unless he shows you considerable commitment when it comes to improving his finances. Set him a deadline, 6 months, 1 year, and if there's no improvement, walk away. A divorce is way more expensive and time-consuming than ending an engagement. You will get burned out continuing to act as his mother when you should be his partner. You will also hate how much money you end up wasting by constantly bailing him out. Money that could be growing your savings, going into your TFSA or towards an RRP retirement savings. If you want kids with this guy, it will be even worse with the financial and childcare burden squarely on your shoulders.
Anj, do not marry this man. He will never change. He won't be bothered if you got an eviction notice because the more important thing is that he just got a great deal on a speedboat. He can't help himself. This is who he is. All the impulse control of a 16-year-old and no understanding his income can't keep up.
His good-paying job won't last forever, and you'll be saddled with his mess sooner or later. When I lived in AB, I saw this dynamic play out so often in couples. Protect your peace either by separating or, if you stay, talk with or get a cohabitation agreement in place and separate your finances completely. Protect old lady you.
Have you actually talked to him about future financial plans, expectations, and approach? You really should have the conversation, ideally before engagement, sharing financial responsibilities, be living together, and definitely before moving in together. I'd honestly say if any guy I was dating exhibited any of these things, even just one or two, I'd have left straight away. And I think this is way more of a deal breaker than you seem to think it is. I think financial reasons account for about 50% of divorces. It's already such a huge issue now. He's got so many bad habits, ones that I personally don't see changing. It's just going to get worse. I think if you stick with him and go through with marrying him, divorce is fairly inevitable. And I'd say his spending habits, view on money is like someone born into wealth, doesn't seem to know the value of money. You seem to say that both of you are not rich, but he earns quite well. I don't really understand how that works, but either way, if he cannot afford his lifestyle habits and doesn't have some rich family trust fund safety net, he'll end up with nothing. Try not to get dragged down with him. I highly suggest you carefully evaluate your decision to marry this guy. I think an option is to share this with a person you trust, who is somewhat financially literate. You seem fairly financially aware, capable, so my guess are you likely have a few who are kind of similar, ideally has met and at least has a vague impression of your fiancé, and listen and carefully consider their advice regarding a future with such a person. I think asking strangers online gives you some idea, but a person who has met him has seen how he is when he's with you, know your feelings, attachment to him, and other small intricacies, subtleties might give you some advice that'll hit harder. I get that it is a sensitive topic, but I think you should have at least one friend you trust to be open, non-judgmental, and give you good, truthful feedback or necessary perspective.